Ever wanted to see the classic RPG from the big bad's perspective? Hey people, voice talking to you, and this is None Shall Intrude, a deck-building roguelite strategy RPG where we are the final boss. If you'd like to check this demo out for yourself, there's a link down in the description where you can download it for free, and right beside that is a link to my full playthrough stream if you want more first impressions and gameplay. We play as a massive evil dragon in a fantasy kingdom awakened by a foolish dragon slayer, and we woke up and chose violence, because our next order of business after our centuries-long power nap is to lay waste to the kingdom beneath our volcanic home. Now that's pretty much as far as the story goes. Nobody has a name, not even us, and the history between us and the kingdom, or why we're actually on a rampage, were details apparently not important enough for the demo. And to be clear, I don't think this game needs a super strong narrative to be successful, but some kind of motivation or at least some context behind why we're resorting to scorched earth tactics would probably make it more involved and definitely more fulfilling. Before I get into how combat works, there is a decent-sized campaign map to consider. Here we can plan out our next attack, as well as keep track of our threat level and how many turns we have left until the final showdown. Each node on the map is either an army, a mystery event, or a trader. Attacking army nodes is the best way to build your deck and earn gold. We can also add run-wide buffs to our maximum health or attack values this way. Each army tells you ahead of time the size, what heroes are present, and the rewards you'll earn by defeating it. However, facing more difficult battles doesn't always earn you better rewards, and on several occasions it was actually more beneficial for me to prey upon weaker armies as they offered greater rewards with less threat. Mystery nodes are special events that can earn you additional rewards or cause you no end of trouble. There were only a couple of different events I actually saw, however, and most often it was just a quiz about some really out-of-character detail, like how many nodes did Region X have? First off, I didn't even know the regions had names. Second of all, you don't know how many nodes are in a region until you've completely conquered it. Third, and most importantly, that's probably one of the most boring questions you could have asked. Honestly, if it was just random well-written events that gave rewards or debuffs without a quiz, I still think it would be way more enjoyable. The last node, as I mentioned, is the trader. Here you can spend gold on artifacts and new cards, and what I found to be the issue was that there were tons of ways to get gold, but the traders seemed to be quite rare, and once visited, you can't go back. This could be a result of the limited game time, so I'll let that one pass for now. As for the timers, each node we conquer adds to our threat meter. When we reach maximum threat, a hero and their army will attack us in our lair. This fight is usually pretty tough, but ultimately very rewarding as it not only earns us lots of loot, but also completely restores our health. The other timer counts down to the final showdown with the Dragon Slayer. On to the battles themselves. I actually really like the concept. We get a set number of actions each turn, and play cards in our hand to spend them. Most cards are connected to one of the three elements we rule over as a dragon: fire, earth, and air. Some cards, like Momentum, will change us to the Inhale state, which I don't really understand other than that it improves the damage of Exhale attacks like our Flame Breath. Many elemental attacks will not only deal damage, but will also alter the terrain with their specific element. Different terrain types will offer different effects. Tornadoes will push enemies around, boulders will add to your armor, and lava will deal damage to enemies standing on it. Additionally, these elemental terrain types will interact with each other. Wind applied to scorched ground will spread the fire to other spaces, while earth applied to a lava space will create a fire bomb. Setting up combos and controlling the composition of the battlefield is really the core of the game, and it's a pretty satisfying mechanic when you manage to pull off a ton of effects all at once. Now that said, the underwhelming music and sound effects take a lot away from that experience. The sound effects that aren't missing are pretty flat and really lack the impact and punch you'd want to spice up a game like this. There's also only a couple of attack animations, and the back and forth of battle feels very mechanical. Speaking of mechanics though, as a boss, we get our own set of boss mechanics we can play around with. We can equip up to 3, and each will either impact a specific phase or change during different phases. Our boss phase is determined by our health, so the closer we are to death, the greater a threat we become. Solid mechanic, great concept. No complaints there. Now the roguelike meta progression comes into play when we complete a run, for better or worse. Throughout our run, we complete tons of achievements that unlock new cards, boss mechanics, and artifacts that we can make use of on subsequent runs. We also earn talent points we can spend in the talent tree to unlock new abilities or improve our overall stats. And that's pretty much all there is to say about the game. And as I was playing, there was an overwhelming sense of something missing here. The mechanics are decent and the concept is simple and effective enough, but any sort of unique style is completely absent. As one of my viewers so accurately pointed out, we feel like a boss, but we don't really feel like the boss. By that, I mean that rampaging through the countryside doesn't really feel all that satisfying, and there isn't much originality to our dragon or the overall game. So here's the obvious changes. We can conquer whole regions by completing all their nodes, sure, but there's no benefit in doing so, even though there's a different visual for conquered regions. Giving players a reason to paint the map into their volcanic territory would be a lot more rewarding with some sort of payout for doing so. Maybe a steady income or a run-wide buff specific to that region. The next is the battle effects, obviously, especially the audio. If the devs really want to lean into the villain side of things, then lay it on thick. Make the heroes scream when they're turned to ash by our fire breath, or maybe even make them splatter when they're killed by an explosion. I want to see them get creative with it, maybe including some custom death animations for when someone sinks into lava or gets shredded by a rock tornado. Lastly, some of the ability effects in the game just aren't very useful, especially pushing enemies around. Sure, it makes sense to push an enemy into a lava space or each other for extra damage, but there's no telling what direction your tornado will push an enemy. And I wouldn't really mind this, weather is random like that, but even our tail whip ability moves an enemy in a completely random direction, potentially pulling a melee fighter closer to you rather than pushing them away. It seems like the variety of cards and enemies in this game is at a good starting point for now, but there's still going to need to be a bit more complexity and maybe something like a bestiary or a trophy room to help us understand how different units work to make the game more approachable and more filling. I want to see different regions with different tactics, effects, units, and heroes and treasures. You know, make the world interesting. In its current state, I'd say this title feels very mid, but it has the potential to improve into a really satisfying and addictive RPG roguelike with a unique twist. I'm just the voice in your head though, so what are your thoughts on None Shall Intrude? Do you like the idea of the boss mechanics? How do you feel about the mix between deck building and board game aspects? Are there any other games you enjoyed playing as the villain? I'd love to chat with you down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like helps the channel overcome the algorithm and keeps the dragon under my house from roasting me. If you want to see more, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep new content coming your way, because I put out new stuff every week. Thanks so much for listening to me today. You'll be hearing from me again real soon.